Minnesota's home insurance rates jumped more than any other state last year. Did you know that? A lot of people moving here only found out after they close. That's one of 6 things the national media isn't going to tell you about living here in 2026. My team and I have helped thousands of buyers through this market, and today I'm giving you the real version of what's true about the headline you've been seeing. I'm going to start with something that might seem harmless at first, but it affects your life in ways you may not think about right away. The thing about the winters here that buyers from warmer states are not ready for is that it's not just about being cold. The season changes how you park your car, how you plan your month, how you think about your pipes, and how you deal with your driveway from around November through March, and some years into April. And you feel that the first time a snow emergency gets called at 9 o'clock on a regular night. When we get enough snow here, the city in Minneapolis starts a 3-day snow emergency plan, and locals take it seriously. Now, it's important to call out that this plan only applies to Minneapolis. Each suburb may have different plans, and looking at the city website will give you the info you need. Day 1, no parking on snow emergency routes starting at 9 in the evening. On day 2, you have to move off the even side of non-emergency streets. Day 3, you move off the odd side. If you get it wrong, your car can get towed to the impound lot, and getting it back is not cheap or quick. So if you're coming from a milder climate, this is one of those local rules you have to learn fast because it may not exist where you're moving from. Then there's the money side. If you're coming from Texas, Florida, the Carolinas, or anywhere with milder winters, heating costs here can catch you by surprise. During a cold snap in early 2026, natural gas prices in Minnesota briefly jumped to about 15 times what utility company expected to pay. XL Energy and CenterPoint both filed notices with the state over it. Even in a more normal year, the average monthly electric bill here has gone up since 2021, and that's a real part of your budget. I keep my thermostat set to around 70 degrees in the winter, and my gas bill's around $150 to $200 a month, depending on how cold it gets. Buyers from warmer states don't always factor that in when they're looking at the mortgage payment. And because we're talking about what winter does to your daily life, make sure you stick around for the HOA part coming up. What some newer suburbs require from homeowners can be pretty surprising. Now back to the point. Your car also becomes part of the winter plan here. Remote starters are part of how people get through this season. Being able to start your car remotely and let it warm up for 10 to 15 minutes is kind of a non-negotiable. Car batteries can fail once temperatures hit the single digits, so long-term residents often replace them before there's a problem. No one wants to be stuck in a parking lot when it's -10 with nobody around you to help. Then there are the pipes, which nobody's talking about during the open houses or fancy social media posts. If a home has pipes in exterior walls or crawl spaces, you need to know how to protect them during a deep freeze. A burst or frozen pipe can cause damage fast, so this is something you want to understand before your first real winter in the house. And then you've got snow removal. For a regular driveway, snow removal can run anywhere from $45 to $160 per visit from a snow removal company. A seasonal contract can land anywhere from a few $100s to around $1,000 depending on the property and services provided. That belongs in your yearly budget. Now, the part that really separates people who stay from people who leave is not always the temperature, it's the darkness here. In December, the sun can set around 4:30 p.m. and it may not come back up until close to 8 in the morning. That kind of long winter darkness can really hit people hard. Seasonal affective disorder affects an estimated 5% to 10% of Minnesota residents, and even people who don't have that diagnosis can still feel the slowdown in January and February. Personally, it can be tough. You wake up and it's dark, go to work, it's dark, and get home at 5 p.m. and the sun is already down, which can make for a long day. But the flip side locals will tell you is that hot climates have limits too. You can't walk your dog at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in Phoenix or Texas in July. You can't go for a comfortable run outside in Houston in August. And in some places, you're tied to air conditioning for months. You can't beat heat, but you can beat cold when outside with the proper gear. In the Minneapolis Metro, if you have the right gear and the right mindset and the right plan, you can still function in winter. People here build their lives around it. You've got the U.S. Pond Hockey Championships, fat bike races at Theodore Wirth Park, and the City of Lakes Loppet Ski Festival, just to name a few events. And those all happen in January and February when the temperatures can be brutal. I had a client actually who moved from Minnesota to Texas for the warmer climate, and now she's planning to move back because the summer heat ended up being harder for her than a Minnesota winter with good gear and good heating. And that happens more than people expect. The people who get through their first 2 winters here tend to settle in. The people who leave usually say it wasn't just the cold, it was the isolation and the darkness they weren't ready for. So go in with your eyes open, buy the gear, budget for the real winter costs, and understand how the season changes daily life. Now let's talk about the costs that don't show up in your mortgage estimate. It starts with property taxes. Hennepin County's effective property tax rate is higher than the national average. And with a levy increase approved for this year, the tax bill after closing can be unexpected. If you're coming from a lower tax, maybe southern state, especially one with different homestead rules or lower property tax rates, you may have planned for the mortgage, but the full monthly cost can look different once taxes are added in or even jump. And then there's the insurance, and I mean both car insurance and homeowners insurance. Car insurance rates here run a little higher than the national average, so that's one more line item to price out before you move. But the bigger issue right now is home insurance. Rates jumped last year more than any other state in the country. And one of the biggest reasons is wind and hail damage. Golf ball to medium golf ball sized hail has caused billions of dollars in property damage during recent storms here, and the average hail claim in the city has nearly doubled over the past decade. That's why insurance companies have changed how they write policies here in Minnesota. For wind and hail, the old flat dollar deductible is not what you see as much anymore. Now you're more likely to see a percentage-based deductible tied to your home's insured or assessed value, but each insurance carrier and premium is different. Some still offer full replacement value, while others offer actual cash value for new roofs. So on a home in the mid 400s, even a 2% wind and hail deductible means you could be paying several $1,000s, like $8,000 out of pocket before insurance actually starts to kick in. The roof situation, like I said, has become a real issue during the buying process. If a home has a roof that's more than 14 to 16 years old, some insurers are moving toward what's called actual cash value coverage, which I mentioned earlier. That means if the roof gets damaged, they pay based on the roof's depreciated value, not the full cost to replace it. And it's a big deal and does affect families financially. A seller may not want to replace a roof that isn't leaking, but a buyer may not want to take on a roof that could become an expensive problem after closing. So if you're trying to buy a home here that has a roof more than 15 years old, build roof replacement into your numbers from day one. When you add up property taxes, homeowners insurance, car insurance, heating costs, and home maintenance, you're looking at real money beyond just the mortgage payment. So before you fall in love with the purchase price, run the full number and have a plan for some savings to go towards the house. The buyers who get surprised are usually the ones who only looked at the monthly payment, not the full cost of actually owning the home. And there's one more thing that surprises buyers here: the governance structure that comes with most new construction in this metro. We're gonna get into that next, but first, quick break. This is usually when people ask me, okay, well, how do I figure out which part of the Twin Cities metro makes sense for where I'm at in life? If you're looking at the suburbs in the entry-level luxury to luxury end of the market, that's the kind of search I work on every day. My team and I would love to help you. My contact information is in the description below. I would love to be your realtor. All right, back to the video. You close on a brand new home in a beautiful master planned suburb and everything looks the way you wanted. But then a few weeks later, you get a letter because your new flower pots don't match the approved colors for the community. That's the HOA reality in a big share of new construction across the metro, and buyers aren't always expecting it. About 82% of all new homes built in Minnesota are part of an HOA or common interest community. So this is the standard for new construction. Builders like Lennar, DR Horton, MI Homes, and Pulte Group are all active here, and they all build master planned communities with rules about what you can and can't do with the outside of your property. Now, the fees themselves may not be the most shocking part. In many of these communities, the cost can be less than $100 per month or even per quarter. So what gets people is the control. Where in many of these neighborhoods, you can't repaint your house without sending it first to an architectural review committee First, there are rules for fence material, height, and placement, and even landscaping changes may need approval as well. And if you have an RV, boat, or trailer, you probably can't keep it in the driveway where people can see it from the street for more than, say, 24 to 48 hours. I actually had a current new construction project where a medium-sized builder wouldn't let a buyer use a certain siding color simply because it matched the identical house next door. That's how specific these rules can get. And before we get much further, stick around because later we're gonna talk about what the media keeps getting wrong about this market. Now, to be fair, these rules exist for real reasons. They help keep the neighborhood looking consistent, and they're meant to protect property values. And after people have lived in an HOA in a new construction community for a while, they may stop thinking about the rules. But the adjustment can be real, especially if you're moving from a place where you had a half-acre lot, parked your boat wherever you wanted, painted your shutters any color, and changed your yard without asking anyone. Minnesota also passed a new HOA Bill of Rights this year, so there are more guardrails now. Fines are capped for single violations, boards have to give homeowners advance notice before changing rules, and there are new protections around board member conflicts of interest. So yes, homeowner protections are getting better, but the CC&Rs, which are the rules around how the community looks and how you can use your property, still do apply. If property freedom is super important to you, be careful about where you buy in this metro. The time to understand what you're agreeing to is before closing, not after. And now that we've covered what it costs to own and live here, let's talk about getting around, because the commute picture has a few surprises too. You do a weekend afternoon test drive to your potential new neighborhood and it feels smooth and easy. So you make an offer, close on the house, and then a few months later, you're sitting in that same spot on a weekday at 5:15 looking at an hour commute, wondering what happened. I've seen this happen with enough relocation and even local buyers that I bring it up in almost every conversation. The Minneapolis Metro does have a pretty manageable commute compared to other major metros in the US. The average commute time here is one of the shortest for larger metros, but averages can hide the hard parts. Truth is, they mix the easy 5-minute drives with the cross metro trips that feel totally different during rush hour. The way the metro is laid out is part of it. There isn't one clean beltway that fixes everything. If you're going from the northern suburbs to the southern suburbs, or from the southwest side over to the northeast side, you may have to cut through the core, and that's where the time starts to really add up. The corridors that surprise buyers the most are I-35 West near downtown, Highway 62 through Edina and Bloomington, and I-694 across the northern suburbs, and I-94 West heading towards Rogers, St. Michael, and Monticello. Highway 62 is one people don't always expect because that stretch is only 2 lanes in each direction, and it can get slow really fast. It's personally probably one of my least favorite roads in the metro. I-694 surprises buyers too, especially if they're looking across the North Metro, and I-94 West can back up because it's the main route heading northwest out of the city. Then there's I-494, which is a big one in 2026 if you're looking at Eden Prairie, Bloomington, or Richfield. That corridor has been under major reconstruction since 2023, and it's not expected to fully wrap up until 2030, which doesn't mean you should avoid these areas, but just something to consider and watch out for. Long term, the roadwork should help and the new express lanes will be useful. But if you buy there this year or next, you need to understand what that commute can look like during construction season. Keep this in mind for later, because when we talk about why people stay here, the answer makes more sense once you understand what daily life looks like. And then winter adds a whole nother layer of complexity here. A commute that feels fine in October can feel very different during the first snowstorm in January. The same road you drove yesterday can feel like a new road the next morning. If you plan for it, you can adjust, but it's something you want to know, again, before you buy and close on the home. And before we get into why people still love this city and stay for decades, we need to talk about the thing a lot of you probably came here for, what the national media has been saying about Minneapolis and what's true when you live here. You can see what I'm walking past right now. It's boarded up, spray painted, and if a national news crew wanted to make one shot to make Minneapolis look like a city in decline, this is the kind of image they'd use. And I'm not gonna walk past it and pretend it's not here. Because if we're gonna talk about what it's like to live in Minneapolis and the surrounding metro, we have to be honest about the hard parts too. There is truth in some of what you've seen on the news. Downtown Minneapolis is dealing with real office market issues to start. As of early this year, office vacancy is around 30%, and some major tenants have given up large blocks of space. Lake Street is still rebuilding too. National media have come back to that corridor again and again since 2020, and the full picture is more layered than the headlines make it seem. Uptown is not like it used to be prior to 2020. However, hundreds of businesses along that corridor have received rebuilding grants and loans, and more than 120 million in broader building improvements have gone into those areas in recent years. But yes, there are still vacant lots and gaps you can see when you drive through. Boarded up buildings, trash, the works. So no, it's not fully healed, but it's also not the frozen in-time version people see on TV. In early 2026, Minneapolis also had economic disruption tied to federal immigration enforcement. Some restaurants and service businesses had workers stay home out of fear, and that affected daily life in real ways. I had a client actually whose home renovation got delayed more than once because the flooring company didn't have workers coming into work. I've also worked with clients and people in my own network who had no issues during that period, and I've heard from others who felt the disruption more directly. That's the part that gets lost in the national media. They tend to flatten into one clean story, but living here is more complicated than that. Now, just a few blocks from here, from where I'm standing, there's also Minneapolis on a regular day. People on bikes, families walking dogs, coffee cups in hand, kids on the path, paddleboards on the water. This is daily life in a city that ranked as the second happiest in the United States in a recent quality of life index. The BBC even covered it. Nearly 99% of Minneapolis metro residents can walk to a park within 10 minutes, which is hard to match for a city this size. And the park system ranked third in the nation last year. When I'm walking through North Loop on a Friday night or around the chain of lakes on a weekend morning or across the Stone Arch Bridge with the skyline behind me, that is Minneapolis too. It's just as real as the boarded up building we were standing at before. So both things are true. And if you're thinking about moving here, you deserve to see both. Now let me show you the side of this city that makes people fall in love with it and move back if they thought the grass was greener somewhere else. This is the part people don't always understand until they spend a normal weekend here. It's a Saturday morning in June. You walk out the door with coffee. There's a trail a couple of blocks away, or you're planning on meeting a friend for a walk around the chain of lakes. You've got runners, cyclists, families with dogs, paddleboards are on the water, and after a while you realize this is just what weekends look like here. This is what keeps people loyal even with the brutal winters. The cost, the traffic, and everything else we've covered. Bede-Makaska, Lake Harriet, Cedar Lake, and Lake of the Isles are all connected by trails, and they're free, public, and cared for in a way that's hard to beat in the Midwest. The Minnehaha Creek Watershed District has helped keep those lakes healthy for decades, and Theodore Wirth Park sits right at the edge of the city with trails people use year round. And then you've got North Loop, which is one of those areas you have to experience in person. You've got century-old brick warehouse buildings, loft condos, rooftop bars, restaurants people plan nights around, coffee shops, and an energy that just doesn't feel like some planned retail strip. More than 30 North Loop businesses are placed in the Minneapolis-St. Paul Magazine 2026 Readers Poll, which tells you locals are showing up here again and again. My wife and I have done a staycation at the Hewing Hotel in North Loop, and it's such a good example of what makes that area work. Rooftop sauna, outdoor hot tub overlooking the city, a great restaurant downstairs that people go to even when they're not staying at the hotel. It's the kind of place that reminds you why people pay more to live nearby. Over near the lakes, around the Excelsior Boulevard side in St. Louis Park, you've got another very walkable pocket with restaurants, Whole Foods, Wakame Sushi, and Steel Toe Brewing. It just makes daily life easier because the things you want on the weekend are already close by or within a very close commute. For arts and culture, Northeast Minneapolis has a different feel. The Northeast Minneapolis Arts District has been recognized by USA Today as one of the best arts districts in the country, with breweries, coffee shops, galleries, and lots of creative energy. Art-A-Whirl, the annual open studio event, brings in over 1,600 artists and businesses, and the Guthrie Theater is one of those places that's worth visiting. Now standing here on the Stone Arch Bridge, you're looking at the skyline of one of the strongest job markets in the country. The Twin Cities are home to 17 Fortune 500 companies, one of the highest concentrations of major headquarters per person in the US. You've got United Health Group, US Bank, Best Buy, General Mills, Ameriprise, 3M, and Ecolab, all right here downtown or in the surrounding metro. That kind of employer mix gives people career options, stability, and an economy that's not leaning on just one industry. And then there are places like Manny's Steakhouse downtown, which sounds like a small thing, but it tells you something about the city. Locals are loyal to it. Visitors make a point to go to it, and restaurants like that don't last unless the city has that kind of business base and customer base to support them. MSP Airport is another important piece here. It's already ranked among the best airports in the country with J.D. Power's top customer satisfaction award for mega airports for 2 straight years. And now it's in the middle of a major improvement program running through 2028. When a region puts that kind of money into its airport, it's telling you something about where it thinks the city's going. Cities that are fading don't invest like that, and the Twin Cities here are still building for what comes next. Nobody moves to the Minneapolis metro by accident, and nobody stays here by accident either. The people who thrive here are the ones who went in with the full picture, enjoy outdoor living, and 4 full seasons of life. Locals at times move away for something different, maybe a warmer climate year-round, but eventually move back as it's a place that's hard to beat. If you're ready to start looking at what's available in the Twin Cities suburbs at the upper end of the market, email me today. I work with relocation buyers and local buyers at this level every day, and I can help you sort through what's worth your time right now. And if you watch this whole video and still can't picture what a normal day looks like here, I filmed that too. That video is linked right here. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.